In addition, the defendant and defense counsel continuing with direct examination of Ms. Gibb. I'll remind the witness you're still under oath for your testimony. Ms. Blake, I believe you have continuing direct. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right, you can proceed.
We were talking about that recording and that Chad had made some comments about how Tammy was going to die. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately when Tammy actually died?
I'm not sure the date. I believe it was in October 2019.
Do you recall learning of her passing?
Yes.
When you learned of her passing, did you reach out to anyone?
Yes.
Who did you reach out to?
Lori.
Do you recall if it seemed like she already knew when you reached out to her?
Yes.
And did she already know of the passing?
It seems that she did.
Prior to Tammy passing away, had you ever talked to Lori about Tammy?
Yes.
What had Lori shared with you?
That she was supposed to continue her mission on the other side of the veil eventually, and that she would be okay with her and Chad being together.
That was going to continue her mission?
Correct.
And Tammy was going to be okay with Chad and Lori being together?
Correct.
Do you recall if Tammy was ever designated as dark?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately when you first heard Tammy being referred to as dark?
It must have been either the end of September or sometime in October. I'm just not really sure.
Would it have been so fairly close in time to her actual death?
Correct.
And again, Chad is the person that would label people dark?
Correct.
Do you recall ever speaking with Lori about whether or not Tammy knew anything about Chad and Lori's relationship?
Yes.
What did Lori tell you in reference to that?
She said that Tammy became suspicious through other people, and she was concerned about that. And
was that fairly close in time to Tammy's death?
I'm not exactly sure when she first told me that. I can't remember when that was.
But at some point, Lori indicated to you it was her understanding Tammy was getting suspicious.
Yes.
Prior to Charles Vallow being killed, did Lori ever indicate if Charles was suspicious of an affair?
It seems that he might have been privy to at the same time Tammy was. That feels kind of familiar. But up to that point, no. I don't know. I can't recall. I'm not sure on that one.
And I appreciate you clarifying that.
Yeah.
With these teachings of light and dark, at some point, did they evolve?
Yes.
And when they evolved, was there another term that was being used for someone that was dark?
Yes.
What was that term?
Zombie.
Did some of the other teachings evolve over time?
Yes.
Do you recall ever talking to Lori about whether or not she 100% believed everything?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
Once or twice she mentioned to me that if Chad's a Satan, he sure is a good one. So that gave me an indication there was some doubt there.
And Lori would tell you she received her information from Chad.
Correct.
And she would go to Chad with her questions.
Correct.
Did you ever talk to Alex Cox about whether or not he believed what was being taught?
Yes.
What did Alex indicate to you?
I asked Alex if he 100% believed that zombies were really true, and he said he 100% believed it.
And I have no further questions at this time.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Blake.
Okay, Pryor. How many times is he going to say, okay? This is prosecution's key witness. What you gonna do? I mean, he's been very slowly but surely just pushing the focus more and more and more and more on Lori. So he'll probably just keep doing that.
All right, Mr. Pryor, you can conduct cross-examination when you're ready.
I'm sorry, Judge. It would just take me a moment, please.
Boy, he's getting really prepared
Good
for
afternoon,
this.
Ms. Gibb.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to go through a little bit of a timeline with you if we could.
Okay.
You, and in particular, I just want to talk about Chad, Lori, Alex, your husband, David, Zulema, yourself. So
Zulema.
you met Chad approximately when?
In the summer of 2017.
And that was at a preparing the people encampment, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and before we go too far, preparing the people is an organization that talks about when there's going to be a second coming and how you respond to that. Is that correct?
It had multiple levels to
Okay, so
talks.
talk to me a little bit about that. What were the levels?
Some people shared conferences about science, and some shared about the Book of Mormon and the evidence of the Native Americans. Some people shared their visions. Some people talked about ancient scripture information. Some person talked about the stars, and so those a variety of subjects.
All right, and I'm not just talking about the one that you went with Mr. Daybell. You had participated in these preparing the people conferences previously to that. Is that right?
That was the first time I'd actually been to one when I first met him.
Okay. And then thereafter, how many of these conferences or these mountain retreats would you go to?
I think I've only been to 2 like mountain retreats, but the conferences were generally in a conference center.
Okay. And the frequency of those?
Let's see, once or twice a year. A handful of times I went. I can't recall how many.
Okay. And sometimes 3 times a year.
It could be.
And is that where you met your husband as well? Future husband, excuse me?
No, not at theirs.
Had one previous to that?
A different one.
Yeah. And that was previous to the one that you're talking about where you met Chad, right?
Yeah.
All right. So you were at a preparing the people conference or an encampment. You met your husband there. And then, I'm sorry, future husband, just met him. And then subsequent, you met Chad at a similar encampment. Is that right?
No.
Okay. Please clarify that for me.
No, I didn't meet David at a camp. I met him at a conference previous to meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't understand. Okay. So you met him at a conference. Was it similar type of conference? A preparing the people conference similar to that?
It was kind of similar. It was more about the study of Isaiah.
Okay. All right. Religious-based conference.
Yes.
Okay. Now you talked about part of the instruction at these conferences were a variety of subjects. A lot of them, well, most of them based in some sort of at least religious theology or religion of some point. Is that fair?
Yes.
And most of them are geared towards the LDS faith?
Yes.
And would you say that these preparedness conferences and these meetings that you attend are consistent with your beliefs in the LDS faith?
Yes, mostly. Not all, not completely all of it, but mostly.
Okay. So when you talk about visions
Mhm.
and you talk about, um, I'm going back to what I think I kind of understand is that visions are like premonitions. Is that kind of what they're all about?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay. So what's the difference between a vision and a premonition?
Well, I would, from my opinion, a vision is something someone sees while they're generally sleeping, but it's a really live experience, as if it's really happening. It's something they feel like they're in that vision, as if they're part of it. It's like we are here. It's something you could actually see. You're
Okay.
part of that. Premonition, at least my understanding, premonition is just kind of a feeling, a gut feeling about something.
Okay.
Like you feel like something's going to happen, but it's no visionary experience.
Okay. And there's nothing inconsistent with the LDS faith about having visions while you're sleeping about things that you believe are going to happen in the future. Is that right?
Sure, that's right.
Okay. So if, and before we go there, and I'm going to hack this up because we've spoken before. And I think the first time we ever spoke, it was your boyfriend, right?
Right,
And now it's your husband.
correct.
And how long have you folks been married?
About 3.5 years.
And you folks live together where?
We don't live together.
Have you ever lived together?
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a time, how much of a length of time did you folks actually live together?
so after we got married, we lived together for about, I want to say 9 or 10 months.
Okay. And then now you live in different households.
Yes,
Okay. And that's just by choice, right?
yes,
So you live in Arizona
correct.
and he lives in Utah?
Yes.
Okay. And we don't need to go any further than that. That's far enough, I think. Okay. So back to this idea of visions. Like you said, it's not inconsistent with your faith that if you have a dream at night, that can be perceived as, it's not a guarantee, but it could be perceived as a vision of something to come in the future, right?
Dreams and visions what I've heard is they're a little different from each other.
Okay.
But yeah,
Well, what you heard, you practice this as well as part of your faith, don't you?
I don't have those experiences, but our faith believes that people can have them.
Okay, so is it something that is something that someone who has a special gift is given the opportunity to have visions? Is that what that is?
I think so.
Okay, so your husband has that gift, correct?
Yes.
And your husband has had numbers of visions, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Sustained.
But there are people that are appointed to, or not appointed, but who are have the ability to have these visions, correct?
Yes.
And you believe that Chad Daybell at one point believed he could have these visions.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned something in the beginning, and I saw that in the past interviews and other things that you've done, and we'll get to that in a minute. But you said that at a number of these podcasts and conferences, Chad has previously talked about the fact that he believed his wife Tammy was going to die early.
Yeah.
And in fact, he brought that up on the or at the conference on the 18th in 2018. He discussed that with the folks at the conference, that he relayed to them that he felt that his wife was going to pass early and had been doing that for some time, right?
I'm not sure exactly when that he shared. I just remember hearing it.
Okay, so it's possible that on October of 2018, at the very time that he met Lori Vallow, the same conference, he had already relayed to the people there that he felt his wife Tammy did not have a long life, that there was a vision he had about that, right?
Before that conference, it was before he met Lori. I knew that information.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
And thank you for clarifying that, because I may have looked at that differently and I viewed that in a different way. So before Chad even approached the conference with Lori, he had been making that revelation at conferences prior to that about his wife, Tammy.
Yes.
Okay. And if I were to tell you that he'd been making that revelation since 2000 or 2015 or 16, would that be consistent with what you know as well?
Objection, Your Honor, stating facts not in evidence.
Sustained.
Do you have a time frame as to when Chad started making that revelation? Any idea?
Well, since I got to know him at least in 2017, I would say between 2017 and 2018.
Okay. And that's when you first learned of it.
Yeah.
Okay. That may not have necessarily been when Chad started, expressing his vision about seeing that sort of thing, right?
Can you rephrase that? I'm sorry.
Well, that's not necessarily, you heard about it in 2017 or believe that's when you thought it was starting, but it could have been earlier than that, right?
Could have been.
Okay. Okay. And do the only two people you know who have visions, Chad Daybell and your husband,
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled.
are the only two people you know who have visions, Chad Daybell in your church, the LDS faith, are the only two people you know who have visions, Chad Daybell and your husband?
No, there's others.
Okay. And it's not an unusual thing, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, I do want to go to an area that I think I've heard you discuss before. And you talked about it when the prosecuting attorney was talking to you, Miss Blake. You use the phrase, and I need you to explain this for me. You use the phrase energy work.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I don't understand that very well. So could you explain to me what energy work is?
Yes. My exposure's been that when you have a practitioner that is communicating with you or your body, they have a certain method that they use through like muscle testing, which if you want to explain that, but anyway, muscle testing, and they ask the body questions about what's going on in your body physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And then they find different ways to help you feel better by just their different methodologies that they would communicate. It's kind of fun. I don't really know how to explain it very well, but
Okay. Well, we'll work through that a little bit just so we kind of maybe try to make it a little easier for everybody to understand. So methodologies, meaning prayer.
well, maybe some people pray, sure.
Meditation.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's possible for some people. I haven't had that experience.
Okay. Something you've talked about in previous interviews with a number of different people is vibrations.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what the concept of, in terms of energy work, what are vibrations?
To my understanding is vibration would be more like a frequency of your body, just like music has a vibration and energy to it. And so it has a certain megahertz. And so that vibration can have a certain positive or a negative way of expressing itself.
Okay. So it's not something that's a divine revelation to you. It's not something that you feel as part of a spiritual thing. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, some people describe spiritual things as vibrations. So it just depends on the person.
Well, you've practiced this vibrations, have you not?
Well, I don't know that I practice. I don't know what you mean by practice it.
Right. You utilize it.
I'm not really sure what that would mean for me. Utilize vibrations. I don't know.
Well, when you make reference in a number of interviews about the concept of vibrations, are we talking about music? Or are we talking about something with religion?
I'm just talking about in general, vibration is an energy that people have around anything that, the world has a vibration. People have vibrations. It's just a frequency that's put off.
And is that frequency giving you any sort of religious message or any sort of revelation of any kind?
No, not for me. Maybe for others, but not for me.
So it's your position that it wasn't doing that. So these ideas and these concepts about light and dark, and we talked a great deal about light and dark. Is that something that's inconsistent with the LDS faith?
Inconsistent, yes.
Okay, so the LDS faith doesn't talk about light and dark.
No.
There's no discussion about that.
Well, I mean, I think Christianity talks about Jesus Christ being the light of the world and that darkness would be associated with Satan. So if you want to say that, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So if someone were to be practicing techniques as they relate to light and dark, or make comments about being able to tell if someone's light or dark, that's something that's inconsistent with the LDS faith.
Yes.
And that's not something you would ever do, right?
No.
You would never engage in conduct that would trying to determine whether someone's a light person or a dark person, right?
Well, I didn't have the ability to know how to do that.
Okay. And did you ever teach that? Light or dark?
I don't know if I shared it with anybody. I'm not sure.
Well, I didn't say shared, I said taught.
I don't recall.
Okay. Is it possible you taught light theory to people?
Well, it's possible.
Is it possible you talked about dark theories to people?
It's possible.
Okay. But you don't remember.
I don't remember.
Okay. And I want to kind of lean into that a little bit about not remembering. Do you remember talking to Detective Moffat from the Arizona bound in Maricopa County some time ago when this case first started?
Yes.
Yeah. And do you remember talking to him about the fact that, you don't have the best memory in the world?
Yeah, I don't.
And the fact that you forget a lot of things.
Forget often.
Quite often, right?
I don't know. That's correct.
Well, what you told Detective Moffat was that ask anybody. I don't remember things very well. Do you recall telling him that?
It's possible I said that to him.
Would it help if I had played the recording for you?
No,
Or
it's not necessary.
it's not necessary, is it?
No.
Because you did tell Detective Moffat that you have a very difficult time remembering things, right?
Yeah.
And then you told him you have a difficulty getting facts and dates and times right, correct?
Yeah.
And that's not something that everyone has difficulties this, but you were particular with Detective Moffat in reminding him that you didn't always get the facts right or the dates right or the times right, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I know that's not easy to acknowledge. Now in the conference in October when Lori and Chad first met, Chad was there to sell books, right?
Correct.
Okay, now I understand that you've taken a jab at writing books as well, right?
A little bit.
You wrote, and I don't want to misrepresent. I know you wrote one book.
Right.
And when did you write that book?
Right about the time I finished it up, about the time I met Lori, so 2018, 2019.
And when did you start writing that book?
When?
When?
Probably, I would say sometime in the middle of the year 2018. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And please straighten me out if I get the title of the book wrong. I meant to bring it in and I didn't bring it in because I have a copy of it. It's called The Fire Within.
No.
Okay, tell me I knew I was going to get it wrong. So correct me.
Feel the Fire.
Feel the Fire. I'm sorry, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of reading lately, so I may get it wrong. Feel the Fire is about your religious experiences and the things that you felt going through the development of your LDS faith, right?
Yes.
And you talked about your personal experiences doing that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then I kind of noticed that there was a discussion with one of the officers, and I think it was with one of the officers. You've interviewed a lot of people. You've spoken to a lot of people, right?
A few. Wouldn't say a lot, but a few.
Well, you've spoken to a lot of police officers, right?
I'd say a few.
Okay. Well, you spoke to Officer Duncan, right?
Right.
And you've communicated with the Lieutenant Ball from up
Yes.
here,
Yes.
or Lieutenant Hermosillo.
Yes.
You spoke with the prosecutor, Rob Wood, a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Was that a frequent conversation with Prosecutor Wood, or was there some level of regularity with that discussion with Prosecutor Wood?
It was infrequent in the beginning, but Yeah, just for a short period of time.
It was infrequent for a short period of time.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and we'll revisit that in a minute. But you also did an interview on TV with somebody.
Mhm. Yes,
You recall that?
I do.
Okay. Do you remember when that was?
2000, let's see, 2000, no, I'm not recalling that exactly when that was.
Okay,
It's been so long. I'm sorry.
that's okay. And I know there's always, and if you would just bear with me. But we do know who you spoke to at that point, correct?
Right, correct.
Who was that?
Nate Eaton.
Okay. Oh, that's right. I forgot about Mr. Eaton. You also spoke with Keith.
Yes.
Oh.
He is one of the interviewers for Dateline.
Okay, and you gave a lengthy interview with him on a national audience interview. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, as part of your preparation for that interview, were there any conditions put in place that you were not going to agree to talk about?
Maybe possibly, but I just can't recall what we talked about before.
Okay. And that was Keith Morrison from Dateline.
I think that was his name.
Okay. And you didn't know him because of any church affiliation or anything like that, right?
Oh, no,
You don't know whether he's a member of your faith or not, right?
I don't know what his faith is.
Okay. And was there any discussion as part of that interview that your intent was to protect your church from exposing anything?
I don't know if that was my intention. I just shared whatever they wanted to ask questions about.
Okay. And at no time were you gearing that interview or any other testimony about having to protect your church?
I don't think that was the goal.
Okay. And that was never any discussion, right?
A little bit. We talked a little bit about it.
About protecting the church?
No, not protecting it.
Okay. So during the process of preparing for this case, you had an occasion at or around the time of the initial preliminary hearing to engage in discussions with Mr. Wood about your testimony. Do you recall that?
Yes,
Okay, and that was started in about May of 2020. You recall that?
it could have been. I can't recall the date.
Okay. And it ended somewhere around November of 2020, right? You don't
I
remember?
don't remember.
Would it help if I showed you some correspondence between you and Mr. Wood to refresh your recollection, or do you remember having a discussion with him during that time?
I remember talking to him often. I mean, you can ask me what I shared, but I don't, the dates, I don't need dates.
Okay, you do remember that there was pretty consistent email communication for a 6-month period between the two of you, right?
Email?
I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. I said email, didn't I? Text messaging.
There was some text messaging.
Some text messaging?
Yeah.
Would it surprise you to learn, and if we need to refresh your recollection, I can stop things. Judge, it'll take me a little while to get them hooked up, but would it surprise you to learn that between May 6th of 2020 and November 4th of 2020, the two of you exchanged text messages between you over 340 times?
It's possible. I really don't know.
Okay. Would it help to refresh your recollection if I showed you all 340 of those text messages?
No, I mean, I know we communicated it. And
Okay.
you got what you got.
Okay. And you acknowledge that during that time, there was a considerable amount of communication between you and Mr. Wood. Would you agree with that?
I'd say it was more often in the beginning. Yeah.
Okay. Would you dispute that there were 340 texts?
I don't know. It's
Okay.
possible. I really don't know.
And one of my concerns is that about that communication is,
Objection, Your Honor. I'd move to strike the narrative that started that question.
Sustained.
at any time during that communication with Mr. Wood, did you suggest to him that you needed to protect either a person or an organization as part of whether or not you were going to testify or what you were going to testify to?
No,
You don't remember that?
no, I didn't. No, what I'm saying is no, I didn't. My intent was not to protect anything other than to share what I knew.
Okay. Okay. So if I were to show you a text message that suggests something contrary to that, would that refresh your recollection?
I don't recall it, so I could care either way.
Judge, could we take just a short moment for me to, I'm not going to be able to refresh a judge up on the screen, so I don't know how you want to do this. I can either bring her this laptop and show her the text message, or however you would like me to do that.
I am okay with you giving her your laptop to review the message, since it's to refresh her recollection. And if we can identify what she's looking at, I'll ask the state if there's any objection to that manner, and of course instruct the witness not to start playing around on the laptop.
And Your Honor, if we could approach just briefly.
Okay.
So he just talked about how she said in her communications with Rob Wood that she needs to protect a person or organization. And of course, he's going toward she's having to protect Lori or preparing a people. I think most dogs have whiskers, and I think all cats have whiskers, but I don't think all dogs have whiskers. Anyway, back to the trial. The so he's trying to elicit testimony that she was trying to protect somebody or some people. And yes, and I was about to go there, walk away, Renee, and hello. Or her husband, her current husband. Right. And I do remember that as well. Their relationship also started as an affair. So it was, interesting to hear her talking about Lori being a Cora whore. Yes, he does attract all the girls with his super long eyelashes and his very fluffy hair. He doesn't just attract all the girls, he attracts all the guys too, because they love him. But yes, I do remember that walk away, Renee. So she, it seems like there are just a lot of sketchy reasons that Melanie Gibb has always acted sketch. But at the same time, she's always seemed like she wants to be out there as well, like wanting to get attention, wanting to be liked. She's in, but she's out. She's trying to straddle this fence.
And then I'll lead it back.
She's in
They've seen
enough
it.
to know
Just bring it.
everything, but out enough.
And Ms.
to
Gibb,
not
after you
feel
have a
good.
chance to read that, would you hand it back to the bailiff and have him return that to me, please?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Ms. Gibb, after you have a chance to read that, it's the third box down.
Right.
After you've had to read it, hand it back to the bailiff, and then we'll talk about it. And if you could identify what was said and the date and time, I would appreciate that. So in looking at that, does that refresh your recollection about discussing protecting someone in this case?
That sounds familiar.
Okay, and in this particular instance, isn't it true that when you were communicating with Mr. Wood, you mentioned to him that you and Mr. Morrison want to make sure the church is protected, right?
Well, I think in my feeling, what it meant to me
Sure.
is that when we talked about these things, that we would share that this was not the teachings of the church. So that's what I meant by it.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that what you were trying to do is you were going to testify. It wasn't that you were trying to testify in a court of law or in talking with Mr. Morrison and not disclose too much about some of the secrets of the LDS faith. Is that what you're telling me?
No,
You were trying to protect some of the secrets of the LDS faith from
No,
being exposed?
no, I'm sorry. I guess it's the way you're phrasing it.
Okay. So in other words, what you're saying is that you were just wanted to be careful about what you said when you're talking to a prosecutor in a criminal case. Is that what this means?
I'm not sure how you're explaining it, that you need to be more clear with me.
Okay, I'll be really clear. You and Mr. Morrison sent a text to a prosecuting attorney, correct?
I don't know who sent that. I'm sure I'm not that text, even though I guess I didn't understand. Was I texting that to Rob? I'm not sure.
Well, Judge, I think what I'd like to do is have the bailiff come back up, take the document, have her look at it and see who it was from and who it was to. And then after you do that, we'll take a look again.
I'll permit that. So, Mr. Bailiff, if you please retake this paper, not yet admitted as an exhibit, but it is shown to the witness to refresh recollection. The witness may review again the text.
Exactly. Nothing is secret.
Okay, I just.
And ma'am,
missed
when you're
that.
done, just put it down because all we're allowed to do is refresh your recollection. Hand it back to the bailiff if you would, and he'll return it to me, ma'am.
I know where he's going with this, but I don't think I think it's a red herring.
And I'll just try to walk through this step by step if that's okay with you. You sent Rob Wood a text at that time, correct?
Yes,
And the text was from you to Rob Wood.
correct.
And in the text, you talked about Keith, the guy from Dateline, and I, right? And is that the Keith Morrison? Is that the guy we're talking about?
Yes,
Okay. Want to make sure the church is protected. Do you recall that?
yes,
He has done a good job so far. That's why I feel comfortable talking to him. Is that what you said to the prosecutor?
I think so. Yes,
Okay. Is there any reason to dispute what I just read is not what you read just 2 minutes ago?
yes, that's fine.
So the question I have with that is, if what you're saying is that, well, you wanted to get the story right in terms of the beliefs of the LDS faith, why are you sending that to a prosecuting attorney who's prosecuting Chad Daybell?
Are you finished?
I am finished. I'm waiting for an answer.
I felt comfortable talking to Rob to let him to know what I was doing. I just felt comfortable sharing that just to let him know what I was up to. Yeah.
So you were sharing with Rob Wood, the prosecuting attorney, that it's your intent to protect the LDS church with your testimony, right?
I guess you could say that.
Okay.
That wasn't the whole point of the interview, but
I understand that.
yeah,
The point of this text was that, right?
well, I guess so.
Exactly. Walk away.
And the 340 other texts between May 6th of 2020 and November 4th of 2020, were those just to say hi?
No,
Okay. So in other words, what was happening here is that there was at least some sort of a relationship built between you and this prosecutor about how and when and where you were going to testify about things in this case. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the testimony.
Sustained.
The point of all this communication between you and Mr. Wood, the prosecuting attorney in this case, was to establish how you planned on testifying in this case and what you were going to say.
It wasn't the established reason why I communicated with him.
And it was just a coincidence then that you happened to mention your church and how you were going to protect your church to the prosecutor who was going to be calling you and examining you as a witness in this case. That's just a coincidence, right?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Sustained.
Look at
Judge, I'm going to need to move for admission of exhibits 6 and 7. These were previously stipulated by the parties, part of the agreement between the prosecuting attorney and myself about what we would stipulate to in terms of exhibits.
Chad is
All right,
more,
there's been offered exhibits 6 and 7, I believe not. Well, confirm with the clerks. Those are not yet entered into admitted.
Chad is
Defense
more
exhibits 6 and
alert
7, not yet
and
admitted.
moving around now than
Is
ever.
the state aware of what these are, and is there any objection once you've reviewed them, please?
Thank you, Your Honor. I was just double checking defense exhibit list. It's my understanding that this is the Lori for Style at iCloud and also the Lolly Time at iCloud, the Cellbrite of those. If that is what those are, they are stipulated to, and there's no objection.
That's what they are, Judge. And the subparts that go with it, I believe under 6, it's A through F, and then 7 is like A through D, I think, Judge.
All right, counsel, I'm gonna have a quick sidebar with you to make sure we don't duplicate numbers or clearly mark, and I'll have our clerk join in on the sidebar just as we get in on defense exhibits.
Hey, Tess Mackin, right? Like the entire time he's been leaning forward, he's been moving around. Right now he's looking at notes. Every other time he's been just like a statue, sitting there looking like a statue, so much so that people have been saying it in the chat. Sometimes I think about his relationship with Pryor, and it's like I feel like he thinks of Pryor as his savior. Hey, Chopper. It's like he thinks his Pryor is his savior and, almost like a daddy to him. And he's like there just to. He's like, okay, here comes my defender, the dude who owns my house now, because I thought that I could get an insurance payment that would make all of this just easily go away. It just seems like, yeah, Superman. It's like, when you're in, oh, he's even opening his computer now. Right, because Melanie knows so much. I think it's just, if anything else, it shows that he's probably got a lot of nervousness in his body that he has to shake off. And he's, having Melanie in that room is probably absolutely nerve-wracking every time she's in the room. Here he comes to save the day, John Pryor. When you're in that kind of mindset, when what you do is you look for, what are they doing in there? What you do is you look for prophets and saviors and stuff like that. Alex Erickson, so good to see you. I've been meaning to call you just to check in. When you have that kind of mindset of, other people coming in to save you, people who could be prophets, people who could be channeling God, it's easy to think of your lawyer who's defending you in your death penalty case and who has gone to the ends of the earth to try to defend you as that person. Yeah, Chopper has identified that Chad is wearing Depends. Yeah, the earthquake that he wrote about in one of his weird ass novels. It's gonna come to be. It's going to come to be. So and this whole idea around, is she trying to protect? She said this
All right, counsel, thanks for the sidebar, just clarifying our exhibits here.
sidebar.
What is being offered, and I believe stipulated to by the state, would be Defense Exhibit 6A through AA. And on that set of exhibits, does the state stipulate those may be admitted?
Yes, Your Honor. With those clarifications, the state would agree that the Cellbrite, the iClouds themselves are already in, and these are content from those iCloud accounts.
Okay, and that will be admitted, and the court will ensure that only what is admissible through that comes in and is observed or given to the jurors for deliberation. Likewise, there is Defense Exhibit 7, and that consists of two subparts 7A and B also. Does the state agree to the admission of 7A and B?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll take the same precaution with those before they're submitted for deliberation. With that, then, Mr. Pryor, if you'd like to continue, you may.
Thank you, Judge. Oh, thank you.
So did you see how Pryor really tried to build up that whole
No,
idea of protection?
What I want to
It
do
fell on
next
his
is
face.
go through a little bit of a timeline if we could, okay? You met Lori in mid to late October of 2018.
At the beginning of October.
Oh, was it the beginning of October?
Yes.
And that was, you were, and what I'm unclear about is that you were either a teacher or an instructor at a religious institution, right?
I was just invited to teach a segment of something.
Okay, and do you recall what that segment was that you were teaching?
It was about health and nutrition and preparedness ideas associated with those.
Judge, may we approach?
Yes.
Yeah, walk away. That was always one of the questions is one of them going to turn on the other? And it looks like we're seeing that played out here. Lori didn't turn on Chad, but Chad turned on Lori. And I wonder if Lori's watching this and realizing this, and if she knew before this that they were going to put everything on her and her brother. Yeah. Speaking of taking an ugly house as payment, here's the house on Zillow. And I was saying earlier, but they started talking. Did you see how Pryor really tried to build up? It's like this method that defense attorney and all attorneys use is try to build up a narrative, a scenario. And he's like, did you or did you not say that you were trying to protect a person or a group? And it was just a simple message about, we want to protect LDS Church. And it wasn't anything that Pryor built it up to be. And it really fell flat on its face. And I would put that in L in his column in terms of him trying to implicate.
All right, council, we're continuing. Just now, apparently there was published to the jurors something that may have had information that was inadvertently published that was not to be given to the jurors. So with what was just published potentially on your monitors or the large screen here, I am going to instruct the jurors to disregard what they saw or anything that was read on there that may have been inadvertently published. It wasn't the intention of counsel to do that or the court to allow it. So whatever you may have read or seen on that, please disregard that and do not consider that in any way in your deliberations or consider it as any evidence in this case. We'll try to work through that issue as additional information may be submitted or published, and be cautious when publishing anything, counsel. With that in mind, Mr. Pryor, once you're ready, you can continue with your cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge.
Wonder how that happened.
So October of 2018, at some point, and you're saying, I think I said mid, but you're saying early of 2018, you met Lori Vallow.
Correct.
And from previous testimony, you discussed statements you made that you discussed that you would talk to her almost regularly.
Correct.
Now, today, you talked about the fact that you spoke with her almost regularly up until January of 2019. Is that correct?
Yeah, more of like a daily occurrence until, I'm not sure exactly when it started changing, but
Okay.
I would say somewhere between January and February.
And then she started what you described as moving around a little bit.
Correct.
Okay. And when she was moving around, let's talk a little bit about that. When she was with you, she was in Arizona.
When she was with me,
When
when I met her,
you first met her in October, that was somewhere in Arizona, right?
right?
And she was there. You folks were there at the same vicinity up until the first part of January. Is that fair?
I believe so.
Okay. And then did she move somewhere around the 1st of January?
So I remember she had the first house. It was either Chandler or Gilbert. I get confused.
Okay.
They're right beside each other. And then she moved to another house, maybe within less than half an hour away from there.
Okay. And during that time, you weren't seeing each other every day then at that point, correct?
When she moved to the second house?
Yes.
I don't know. We saw each other often. I don't know how. At that point, I don't remember.
Okay, you don't remember. Okay, and then at that point, after that second house, then where did she go?
She went to Hawaii.
And that was around February 1st, right?
It was in February. I don't recall when she actually flew out there.
So if I were to represent to you that around February 1st to the end of March, Lori Vallow was living in Hawaii, is that something that you would have any reason to disagree with?
It could be true.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And then when she's living in Hawaii from February 1st of 2019 till the end of March, how often did you see each other in person?
Oh, just once.
Okay. Saw each other once. Tylee was out there at one point as well, right?
Prior to me coming, yes.
Okay. And please excuse me, but your relationship with Tylee would be described as not the best. Would that be fair?
I would just say no relationship.
Okay. And that's what you've previously said. There just wasn't any relationship, right?
That's right.
You folks didn't particularly care to be around each other.
That's not true. It just didn't.
Okay. Just no relationship.
Right.
So when you testify that you met her a couple of times, I think is what you said earlier today. Is that right?
A few times I've been around her.
Okay. It wasn't of anything of any substance, correct?
Correct.
So anything she would have said or not said to you, it wasn't anything of any significance, correct?
She wasn't talking to me.
Okay. Okay. That's no relationship. I agree.
Objection, Your Honor. Strike the narrative.
Sustained.
Well, during that February 1st to the end of March, how often would you talk to Lori on the phone?
On the
I am
screen,
not
Amy,
sure.
Okay, you don't remember.
I don't remember.
You would have remembered if it was every single day, right?
But it's been too long for me to recall that.
Okay. Okay. And would you agree with me that your memory would have been better closer to the incident than it would be this much time later, right?
I believe so.
And you would agree with me that if you were to give any kind of a statement close in time to when these events took place, they would have been more accurate than statements that maybe you're making today.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more.
Okay. Well, you acknowledged to me that you have difficulty getting facts straight and information straight.
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the testimony and it's a narrative. Move to
Sustain.
strike.
Sustain and strike that.
Okay. You testified earlier that you sometimes don't remember things correctly.
That's right.
Okay. Is it possible today that that's you're suffering from that today as part of your testimony?
I think it's a general forgetting because when you go have a relationship with somebody, you don't remember every detail of it. I think it's a normal forgetting.
But you were pretty detailed in your testimony today, specific about a lot of things.
Objection, Your Honor, move to strike. There's no question.
There is a question
Well
coming.
sustained. It wasn't a question, Mr. Pryor. It's just a
Please,
statement.
Pryor.
It's argumentative.
Who's the defense? Who's the
Go ahead with the
defendant,
question,
Pryor?
please.
And look at Chad. Look at Chad.
So what you're telling me is that your testimony today is based on, to the best of your recollection, what you remember happened back several years ago, right?
Yes.
And that today you're not influenced by your difficulty remembering things sometimes today, right? Just for today.
Well, the same.
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Come on, Pryor.
Sustained. Ask another question, please, Mr. Pryor.
You're not suffering through your testimony today of the issue we talked about you being somewhat forgetful, right?
It's a hard way to answer that question because of the things that we're talking about today, I've shared so often that those are the things that I remember.
Okay. Okay. And we're going to get to that a little bit about some of the things. Now, after the end of March, then where did Lori go?
I know she at one point was with Alex, and I can't recall exactly when that was, but it was prior to her going to Texas.
Was with Alex somewhere.
Yeah, she went to Alex's house,
Where did Alex live?
in his house.
What town?
It's either Queen Creek or Santan, Arizona.
That's in Arizona. And then at some point she went to Texas. Is that what you were saying?
I just remembered she went to another, let's see. She had another house she went to. I'm just trying to remember where that fit in.
Okay. But in any event, she was moving around quite a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if I go back to February through March, February 1st through the end of March, when Lori was in Hawaii and she was at a place called Kauai,
Correct.
one of those islands over there.
Correct.
Okay. And she was with Tylee for at least a portion of that, right?
I believe Tylee, and I think she had a friend with her too. Tylee's friend and her.
Okay.
That's my memory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But JJ was with the father, Charles, correct?
I would assume.
Okay. You don't know.
I haven't thought about it.
Okay. So you don't know where JJ was at this point.
I probably knew that then.
Okay.
Yeah.
You knew that then? You just don't recall now, right?
I haven't thought about it. I don't recall.
Okay. Okay. So for a 2-month period, Lori didn't have JJ with her when she was in Hawaii. JJ, at least we think, was with Charles for that 2-month period.
I would say so.
Okay. Okay. And were you aware that there were divorce proceedings filed by Charles at some point?
I was aware of that.
Okay. Were you also aware that subsequent to those divorce proceedings, there was a reconciliation between Charles and Lori?
I believe so.
Okay. And at that point, they were contemplating getting back together and trying to work on their relationship, right?
I could be. I can't remember exactly the words, but I would say it's possible.
Okay. Well, I guess if you're talking to your friend every day and this great communication is going on, I would think that a discussion about reconciliation would have been discussed during all those daily conversations. It wasn't
Objection, Your Honor, narrative, move to strike.
coming to-
Sustained.
Was there a discussion about reconciliation between you and Lori after the March visit to Hawaii by Lori?
It's possible.
Okay, you don't remember though, right?
It's just been too long. I haven't sat and thought about that for a while.
And then at some point subsequent to their reconciliation, do you have any idea where Lori moved to? And I would talk about in June, July, August of 2018.
So the house it was either Gilbert or Chandler, Arizona. She moved into another house.
And at that point, were you still maintaining that daily phone discussion with Lori?
I don't know how often we spoke.
You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Okay. So you wouldn't be able to say that you spoke to her every day. You don't actually remember how often.
I don't remember.
Okay. And then at some point there was an issue with Charles and Lori and Alex at that Arizona home. You recall that?
Yes.
And that was a situation where you had previously testified that there was an altercation with a bat and excuse me, Tylee was there. And at some point, Alex went into the bedroom to retrieve his gun because he was feeling threatened.
Correct.
And at that point, it came back and there was a shooting.
Yes, that's what I heard.
And to your recollection, on the premises at that point, Lori Vallow was there at that point?
I'm not sure exactly where she was at that point. She just shared what she shared. I know at some point she took JJ to school,
Right.
but I don't know in between all of that.
Okay.
When she left and when she stayed.
Okay. But initially, Lori was there.
Right.
Initially, Tylee was there.
Right.
Initially, JJ was there.
Right.
And initially, Alex was there.
Yes.
And initially, Charles was there.
Correct.
And then after the shooting, or at least at some point, Lori left and took JJ and Tylee somewhere else. Is that what you recall?
I remember something to that nature. I don't know exactly when they left and stayed. I don't remember all that.
Okay. Okay. Now, did you have information about, and just tell me yes or no, did you have information about Lori's financial situation?
Only what she shared with me.
Did she share with you about the life insurance she got as a result of Joseph Ryan's death?
Oh, yes, she did.
Okay, that was a significant amount of money.
I think it was $2,000 a month for Tylee.
Well, I'm talking
Did you
about the
get that?
life insurance.
Oh, seemed like it was about $20,000 if I remember.
Is it possible you're confusing what Alex took to Idaho and what Lori got?
I have no idea what he took to Idaho or if he even did that. That's not my knowledge.
And you didn't have regular communication with Alex Cox. Is that what you're telling me?
Right.
Okay. And when I say you didn't have regular communication from October of 2018 until January of 2020, how often would you say you actually spoke with Alex Cox?
Oh, I couldn't recall.
And Judge, I'm looking at 215. I'm inquiring of the court as to whether or not you want to take a short. I've got a bit to go, Judge.
I understand. Let me have a quick sidebar with counsel.
So I find it interesting that her memory gets a little more foggy around the incidents surrounding Alex Cox and Charles Vallow, because she was actually much more around. Now, I also have memory issues, and so does the average human being. You know, every human being has memory issues. Not everybody has a grasp on their memory issues, right? Or how warped memory can be. Sometimes people think that their memories are exact even when they aren't. So, I think that Melanie is both snaky and
All right, thank you, council. We are going to go ahead and take a mid-afternoon break here. We'll try to keep this break if we could to about 20 minutes, but I understand it takes time for movement of the jurors, et cetera. We'll come back on then, and we're going to try to wrap up with evidence today at 3:15 instead of 3:30. So with that in mind, if we can try to abbreviate the break, we'll do that now.
All right.
okay, they're going to take about a 20-minute break. This has been interesting. So, some observations. Like Tess Mack, I've been zeroing in on Chad during this testimony. Let me get a different view here while they're coming out, and they're whispering to each other right now. He seems so much more nervous and so red.
All right, folks, we'll see you in 20 minutes. Really 15 by the time we.
See, look at their relationship. Their relationship is they're like bros, man. Those two. Chad and Chad and Pryor, they're like bros, man. They're in each other's corners. Break is your favorite part, Harlot. That's funny. Oh, thank you, Sparkles. That's very kind of you. Was there even any evidence of prior violence from Charles to Lori for everyone to ignore this killing of Charles? No. No. There when Charles was trying to have Lori committed because he was calling her, because she was calling him Ned Schneider and saying that he has dark spirits, and he was threatening to kill her. Or no, she was threatening to kill him. I could have you killed. I'm an exalted being, all this stuff. Then he's trying to have her committed. She ends up at the police station with Tylee and Melanie. And that's why I keep saying Melanie is a big part of the fuck shit that we can't see behind the curtain, right? I want to make sure I'm addressing this thing. Right. They tried to paint Charles as a mean, violent, horrible, abusive person. They talked about how at one point he got really angry and they all had to leave the house once. But there's no evidence whatsoever. No, it wasn't Melanie, her niece. It was Melanie Gibb. I made several videos about this situation, Walk Away Renee, because I am livid about how the police in Arizona handled that situation. It was insane because Charles was giving them actual evidence. He played for them audio recording of Lori saying, I could have you murdered or something like that. I could have you dead. You are a dark spirit. You are saying all these things to him, verbal threats. And they played it off. They're like, that could mean anything. while he's playing this verbal threat to the police, he also has their ward president with them. Okay. I forget this guy's name, the ward president. And Charles thinks that this ward president is his friend, but little did we know that this ward president was closer friends and more loyal to Lori's side of the story. So he also minimized these threats about Charles. And when he talked, he also had a separate one-on-one telephone interview with the with a police officer and minimized the threat, and actually made it sound like they were basically trying to ask if Lori was crazy, and he's like, oh no, she's totally normal, and everything's normal. But that is why you all have to understand anybody can be manipulated, right? Because of course everybody thought Lori was a perfectly sane, wonderful person because she could act like a perfectly sane, normal, wonderful person on the outside. But that's how it can be. That's how incredibly manipulative people can be. They can put on a show for a really long time. They can commit to this show for so long that it will fool you, and the only people that will really see their true selves are the people that live with them day after day in and day out, and the ones that they feel that they can trust because they're married to each other. Oh, I'm married to this person. They're under my control. I can show more of myself to them, or I can use my control techniques with them, which shows more of myself to them. Right? So that was the relationship between, in my view, Lori and Charles. And at first, Lori and Charles were in love, and Charles was her hero. And then, as all relationships go, they sour. But when they sour in a relationship, that's right, Molly Lollipops. When a relationship sours with a person who is so diabolical like Lori, they don't just go away. It has to be, oh, this person is a horrible person. And because she's virtue signaling herself as this perfect person who would never do anything to anybody. She's a perfect person, a beautiful woman, a great mother. She can't be the one who's, having the affair and leaving Charles. She has to make it so he's having the affair and he's the abusive one. So in that police station, it's Lori, Tylee, and Melanie, and they paint Charles as this crazy abusive animal who's having an affair when we know that it's Lori. So let me grab that thing for you guys, because this is getting me fired up and it pisses me off so much. My goodness gracious. Yeah, here it is. So just listen to this. You see, she's flirtatious. She harms them. There's Tylee to our right, her left,
No, I won't fit with those
and
handles.
Melanie walks in.
This thing makes my hips rather wide. Okay. Yeah.
He's like, it's just good to have it on record, so.
Yeah, okay, I got a little bit of info from dispatch. Said he stole your phone,
What
and
happened?
your purse.
Why
Yeah.
don't you tell us what happened?
So yesterday, I got an argument with my husband on the phone, and he was in Texas working, and I found some stuff that he'd been doing, so he was really defensive. And so
I found some stuff that he'd been doing and he was really defensive, right?
took the kids, we spent the night in a hotel because I knew he was coming home. And so this morning, when I took my son to school, which he goes, when I went into the school to take him into school, he was waiting somewhere, and
So she just completely left out the part, where she took everything out of the house, everything, cleaned out the entire house, moved it, went to the airport where his truck was parked and took it, left him without a ride. He arrives at the airport. He has to call somebody to get a ride from the airport. He arrives at his home. He's locked out of his home. The locks have been changed and everything is gone. Okay? So Lori hasn't said any of that. That all has happened before Charles takes her phone away. So what Charles does the next day, he has to call the police, get the police to come and help him break into his own house, the one that he's paying for, you guys, okay? Help him break into his own house, and then find out that all his stuff is gone. And the police there are like, oh, this is a civil dispute. This is a civil dispute. Oh no, I didn't see Nate Eaton's tweets. Are they important? I'll go look right now. So the police tell him, civil dispute, civil dispute. Okay, so Pryor is trying to subpoena Gibb to be a defense witness too. He tried to serve her over the break. Wow. Oh, wow. Of course, that's crazy. All right. So back to the story. All right. Back to this story. So, yeah, he comes back. His truck is gone. His house is emptied. The police help him break in and they're like, civil dispute. Okay. So then he can't get a hold of Lori. She's not answering any of his calls. And Melanie Gibb knows all of this. She's in on it. She actually helped Lori move. Okay. I'm sorry if I'm getting loud. This situation makes me so freaking angry. Okay. Melanie helped her. Melanie helped her move. So then Charles is thinking, how do I talk to Lori? She's not answering my calls, whatever. I need to get my stuff back. So he comes up with a ruse. He actually tries to call Melanie Gibb Oh, actually, sorry. I have it back. I have it in the wrong order. So then he knows that Lori's going to have to drop JJ off at school. So he waits for her to go into the school to drop JJ off. And he takes her purse and her phone out of the car. And he does that realizing that she will probably go to the police station and report him. But before she goes to the police station to report him, he uses Lori's phone to text Melanie Gibb. And then Melanie Gibb is like, finds out that it was Charles, not Lori, texting him. And she's like, ooh, I feel a little, deceived here. This is kind of deceptive. And she tells and then after that, they being Lori, Tylee, and Melanie, go to the police station to report her stolen purse and phone, and then Darvo the whole situation. Darvo's a whole situation. So that's what we're watching here. This is Lori Vallow in action, baby. And it's just absolute insanity.
Like stole my purse out of the car, my whole purse. So my phone, my wallet, my money, my everything was in there. So I had the door locked, but the sunroof was open because we have a service dog and he was in the car and I didn't want to, my son was kind of throwing a fit. I didn't want to get them both out of the car because it was a mess this morning. And we didn't have any of our stuff because we spent the night in the hotel and he was out of his element. So I didn't lock the door for like the first time ever. And he whatever, either got it out. I don't remember if the door.
And so Tylee is sitting, in our view, to her right. Watch Tylee's body language, because at certain points you see how she manages Lori. And she, Lori will start to get overexcited and her voice will start to raise. And Tylee reaches over to her and grabs her and stops her. So watch Tylee's body language.
Or as long as he got it out, or he reached through the sunroof and just got it.
Okay.
But then he started texting all my family and all my friends and impersonating me and got my friend lured over to the house to meet him, where he had kicked in the door to get into the house and stuff. So
You did that this morning.
last night.
Okay.
Which I'm glad we went there.
Right.
Now, one important thing to understand is that it was a different police department that Charles called to help him break into his own house. So she also is saying, oh, he kicked in the door of my house. No, the police helped Charles break into his own house. So the police departments weren't talking to each other.
So I got there, I'm like, Lori?
Where's Laura? But he
Oh,
texted
she's
her
not
from
here.
my phone because he was pretending to be me, saying, "Oh, come meet me at the house," or whatever.
Okay.
So,
How did what did he say to you?
He said, can you come in the house now?
And then when
And
you
I
get,
said, sure, yeah, I did.
okay.
Yeah, proceed.
So this illustrates that when you are dealing with dirty people like Lori, when you're being abused by an abuser like Lori, sometimes you resort to their methods of craziness to deal with them because other stuff isn't working. So so the issue is when the authorities get involved, they need to help. They need to figure out how to discern who the aggressor is being in this situation, who the manipulator is being in this situation. Because yes, Charles impersonated Lori on her phone, but what happened leading up to Charles impersonating Lori on her phone? right? How did we get to this point? Who is doing more of the fuck shit? And is Charles's fuck shit a way of coping with her fuck shit? You know what I'm saying? So it's such a messy, sloppy situation, and the best way to avoid it is just to learn how to catch the red flags of these types of people early, so you don't get into any sort of intimate or close relationship with them, and you don't have to deal with this.
To act like he was himself.
Do you have the text messages on your phone?
I have it on my phone, but so when I got there, I said, you've been using Lori's phone to connect with me. He goes, sorry, I've deceived you. I said, oh, okay, yeah, you did. And luckily there were some other people.
See, an honest person, Charles is like, yep, I did that. I actually actively deceived you to get you here because I'm at my wit's end. An honest person doesn't automatically admit that. They just keep going on with the ruse, and they keep lying on top of lying on top of lying to keep covering that up. They're like, oh, no, that wasn't me. That must have been somebody else that must have been her texting you, but I'm here now, so hey. Okay, where's that session? We will continue this conversation later, but that situation drives me insane. Because if it didn't happen, we wouldn't be sitting here, I don't think.
And Your Honor, I apologize to do this, but before we bring the jury in, could counsel approach briefly?
Yes.
I'm so sorry, Renee. It's so hard to realize that your own family members are so toxic that it's kryptonite to speak with them, that it's disruptive to your own life to speak with them, because of course there are parts of them that you really love, but then you have to weigh, is it worth the love I feel for them to be treated in such a horrible manner all the time? And we're taught this sort of outdated notion that our family, we have to stick by our family no matter what. No, I'm sorry. I don't have to stick by my family no matter what. When I was sexually abused as a child, I'm sorry. No, I do not. So that's a incredibly outdated and unhealthy notion. You don't have to stick around and be loyal to anybody who's not being loyal to you or not being or is being abusive to you. Yeah, thanks, cameraman. So I'm going to try to read more of these tweets about prior time trying to
Okay, we're back on the record on KCR 22211623. Before the jurors are brought in, we've got a couple of issues we want to put on the record outside the presence of the jurors relating to making a record about exhibits in this case. The first matter the court would bring up is that earlier in the trial, the court noticed that several of the state's marked proposed exhibits had reference as sort of Bates numbers or other markings on some of those exhibits that referenced the term Vallow/Daybell. The court raised a concern sua sponte about a possible appearance of the fact that in Lori Vallow's case, the trial's already concluded and she was convicted. I didn't want reference necessarily expressly on all the exhibits to that trial, as some of the jurors may or may not know about that. depending on what they revealed in voir dire. And so the state has thereafter, I think maybe one came in with the reference to Vallow on a Bates stamp. The state's been redacting those references as it relates to referencing Vallow. From the state, does anyone wish to mention anything further or to clarify the record on handling those exhibits and how they've been admitted in the case?
No, that's an accurate representation, Your Honor, and we'll continue to redact those
Okay.
if there's any left.
All right. So that's the issue there. On other exhibits that came in today, they were offered as defense exhibits 6 and 7. The court in a sidebar got together with the evidence clerk as well as staff attorney and counsel to look at those exhibits before they were admitted or published and make sure they were properly marked. It was pointed out that many or most of those exhibits contained improper dialogue, written expressions on them or labels that would not be admissible, descriptions, for example, that were argumentative. And so while the court is permitting the defense to go forward and those exhibits have been admitted, the court is going to ensure that before they're published, they will have those references removed, and we won't give those to the jurors for deliberation or publish them unless those references are not included in the actual exhibits. I did make a curative instruction as one exhibit apparently was published briefly to the jurors, and that was the basis of the court's curative instruction for the jurors to disregard that information that may have been descriptive and not evidence in the case. Does the state wish to make any further clarification on, well, I'll start with the defense because those were defense exhibits. Mr. Pryor, anything further on those exhibits and how they were handled today by the court?
Judge, a number of the exhibits have descriptions of what they are in terms of content. And I understand that what I understand is the court just wants the number and the sub number and delete all of the other descriptions, whether the court feels they're inappropriate or not the proper description of that exhibit. I can delete all of those.
Okay. And I do wish those to be not included.
Okay.
Anything further on that issue from the state?
Your Honor, with regard to that issue, I think the state just wants to clarify that the exhibit that was inadvertently shown is actually, to the state's knowledge, not an exhibit. It's not a stipulated to document. We had been talking about specific items that had been pulled from the Cellbrite or the iCloud accounts. The document that was published to the jury was not that. It actually made reference to grand jury proceedings, a preliminary hearing, and Lori Vallow's trial. And then I think it had something marking inconsistent statements, and that was published to the jury. The state does have concerns about that. I recognize the court did give a curative instruction. I think at the outset of this trial, the court gave an instruction to the jurors they were not supposed to consider Ms. Vallow, whether she had a trial or what any outcome was of any proceedings, and they weren't supposed to speculate. So I think that has now been published to them. I recognize the court has given that curative instruction. It also came to the court's attention that maybe there was a comment made sometime around that same time from counsel to the bailiffs about not touching his computer. So I think we just wanted to make a record of that. But we do recognize the court has given that instruction. But for purposes of appellate reasons, we wanted to make sure that we had a clear record.
And Judge, in response, I don't know that there's anything appropriate for me to direct a bailiff not to touch my computer when I'm stepping away from the podium. In regards to the other things, Judge, somehow those statements may have inadvertently been exposed by way of I should have probably removed the HDMI cord, and I think they were reflecting some of my notes. So I can relay that, but there was no intent to publish that to the jury.
Okay. Well, on the second to last point there, well, on your final point, Mr. Pryor, and what the state's argued, what was published, okay, I'll clarify, was not an exhibit, was not evidence. The court did give a curative instruction. It was inadvertently published by the defendant in this case. At this point, because it was published, all we can do is have that curative instruction and make sure we have additional instructions and our final instructions to the jurors that they are only to consider admitted evidence, and that they were specifically instructed that evidence is not admitted in the case, and leave it to the jurors to commit to following those instructions. So from what I briefly saw, I'll note it wasn't up there that long. I don't believe it created more of an issue than is necessary that could be cured by the curative instruction given. So I won't draw any further attention to it on behalf of the jurors hearing about it, other than a general new instruction that will come with them for deliberations about what may be considered. On the point of what apparently was said by Mr. Pryor to the bailiffs, I'll just indicate, of course, the bailiffs are in charge of the courtroom at the direction of the court. And I'll instruct all counsel to be respectful of the bailiffs as they do their jobs, and in particular to not make any sort of comments in front of the jurors that may confuse the jurors or concern the jurors as it relates to how the bailiffs are doing their job in here. I have full confidence in the way the bailiffs have handled this courtroom throughout the trial. And so I'll just leave it up to counsel to follow that instruction as well, and refrain from any types of editorial type comments in front of jurors, please, while this trial goes on. So those are the issues we needed to discuss outside the presence of the jurors. At this time, then, we'll continue with the cross-examination. Is the defense going to be ready to proceed and have the jurors returned?
Yes, Judge. And for clarification, we are ending at 3:15 if I'm going to try to get through this.
We are going to end at 3:15 today because
Okay.
we've got another hearing at 3:30.
Okay.
Of course, Lollipop Guild, we understand.
Okay, how long will that take?
Just a couple.
All right, we'll go ahead and go off the record for now as we reset a device. We'll have the jurors brought in while we're doing that, and then we'll continue on with evidence until 3:15.
Okay, that'll give us a little bit of time to chat.
So we can have the jurors brought in now. Thank you.
So Test Mac published it on the screen and then got upset at bailiff for trying
Sure.
to. Oh, stop, Steve. So Steve's just trying to let me know that somebody's outside. He's so nice about that.
Thank you.
I didn't quite hear that, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's what went down. Because for evidence to have gotten published on the screen while during cross-examination, that would have had to have been prior, right? But I didn't hear the part about the bailiff trying to plug it while it was being shown on the screen. Yeah, that's right. He is named after Steve Jobs, and I'm not kidding. It was my son's idea because I like being able to say, "Sit, Steve. Lie down, Steve." Steve Jobs was hard to work for, you guys. It's nice to be able to boss a Steve around, okay? It's also to honor him because Steve Jobs also changed my life for the better as well, and many others. But he was a jerk. He knows he was a jerk. He was a jerk. He didn't like that he was a jerk, but he was a jerk. So they said it was defense, said bailiff got yelled at for touching the laptop, which is how he posts and publishes things. So I assume that's right. Yeah, it sounds right. And to me, what it sounded like when the judge was talking about all that stuff, he was saying in a very polite and judgy way, judgified way. No drama in court, please. Keep your drama, save your drama for your mama. Save your drama for your mama. Kids, he is a whiner. He's definitely a whiner. Is Steve still on? No. Steve was always on the other side of the veil. I'm kidding, Solo.
7-1.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated.
A commenter asked me on my other channel if you saw Steve Jobs' wife at a
All right,
Rock,
Ms. Gibbs is still under oath.
Would she
Mr. Pryor is
recognize you?
conducting cross-examination. As I mentioned, we'll go for another 25 minutes here till 3:15 and conclude, since the court's going to have another hearing outside the presence of the jurors later today.
Judge, the technical issues are resolved.
Yes, you can proceed.
Oh, I'm sorry, Solo. I misunderstood you. No, he died in 2011 of complications from pancreatic cancer.
Now, Ms. Gibb, I need just a clarification if I could. You talked about how light and dark are they something that's not within your practice? Is that what I understand?
And not the way that they described light and darkness in my beliefs as a member of the church. I would just talk about light being the light of Christ.
Okay. So in other words, identifying someone as light or dark would not be something that you would do.
No.
Okay. And discussing the issue of portals, there was some discussion with the prosecuting attorney about portals. And please bear with me. A portal is what exactly?
It was made known to me by Lori that portals are something they created by saying some type of prayer, I think, and
Okay.
creating a place where they could communicate spiritually to each other.
Okay. And that's not something that you would practice as well?
No.
Okay. Okay. I noticed that a lot of your testimony when you were talking about zombies and talking about information about various levels of light and dark, and frankly, most of the subject was information that was conveyed to you by Lori. Would that be fair?
Yes.
You didn't talk to Chad very often, did you?
No.
And in all the time that you knew him, I would say less than a handful of times you actually spoke with him, right?
I'd say so.
Would that be fair?
Be fair.
Okay. So when I was listening to your testimony earlier with Ms. Blake, a comment that you continually made was that Chad told Lori and Lori told me, and I may be paraphrasing that the wrong way, but in essence, that's what you were saying, right?
Correct.
So I guess what I'm asking is you're relying on what Lori Vallow is telling you, and you don't really know whether what she's telling you is the truth or not, do you?
I would say I wouldn't know 100% sure. No.
Okay. Because Lori has lied to you before,
Yes.
and she's been untruthful to you about other things, correct?
Yes.
I mean, you talked a little bit about the whereabouts of JJ, and then in your view, she lied to you about that, right?
That's right.
Okay. Now, when I listened to the tape recording, remember the tape that Miss Blake played at the end of the conversation that you tape recorded? Now, prior to that tape recording, had you talked to any law enforcement agency about recording that conversation?
Never.
And I noticed it was interesting because before you started the tape recording, you identified who you were and time and all of that, and made a very clear, succinct record of what was going on. And it sounds like you just deliberately knew in advance you were going to tape. Is that correct?
Well, yeah.
Okay. So you knew what the subject was going to be, and you knew what to answer and what not to answer while you were on that tape, right?
I had no idea what the conversation, how it was going to flow. So I can't say that that's true.
Well, you knew the subject of what the conversation was because you initiated that.
Sure.
Okay. And when I listened to the tape, And if we have to listen to it again, we can. But when I listened to the tape, it sounded like Lori's responses were in the singular. And what I mean by that, as an example, I had to move her to somewhere else, talking about Tylee. It wasn't they had to move her, it was I had to move her. Do you recall that?
I believe so.
And then the other one again in the singular. I will do whatever the Lord needs me to do.
Yes.
Okay. So again, in the singular, when you and Lori and I guess Chad was in the background, he talked a little bit about his experiences with Tammy, but Lori Vallow's comments were not we will or they will, it was I will in the singular. Do you recall that?
That sounds familiar.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, do you need to listen to it again to make sure, or are you pretty
No.
clear?
No, it's good.
Okay. And then when you talk to Lori about Alex, about saying the things that Alex did about, you don't want to know. Okay. She said again in the singular, I don't know why he would say that. Not we don't know why he would say that. It's I don't know why he would say that. Right?
Right.
Okay. Now, initially, when the investigation started over the disappearance of JJ, and that was close to Thanksgiving time, correct?
Between October and November, yeah,
Well, the end of November when the
Yeah.
police showed up, right?
yeah.
You remember that, right?
I do.
Okay, so you do have a recollection of about that when this took place, right? Okay. Basically, you received a call from the police, correct?
Correct.
And initially, it wasn't that you kind of lied, you lied to the police officers. Remember that?
I do.
So when you said you kind of maybe weren't truthful in the beginning, no, you lied to the police,
Sure.
correct?
Sure.
Okay. And then after you told the police a lie about having JJ with you, correct? After some more prompting from the police, you sort of cleared that up, right?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the prior testimony.
Sustained.
Okay, so how did that play out then after you initially lied to the police? How did it play out that you then corrected yourself with law enforcement after your initial lie?
I went to see them personally and talked to them about everything I knew.
Okay. And that's when you realized that, oh, well, my lie to them isn't going to hold up. I better sort of tell them something else, right?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative and mischaracterizes the prior testimony.
Sustained.
And so the purpose of going back to the police was to clear up your initial lie, correct?
No,
Oh, it wasn't?
no.
Well, the purpose of going back to the police was to tell them what you felt they needed to hear, right?
I felt an obligation to share everything I knew with them.
Okay. And I guess that obligation wasn't so strong when you initially told the police the lie that you had JJ, right?
It was a conflict within me.
Okay. And that conflict within you said, it's more important that I lie for Lori Vallow than it is I tell the police the truth, right?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative and misstates the prior testimony.
That is overruled. You can
So-
answer. Hold on, there wasn't an answer.
Sorry, Judge.
Sorry.
You need me to have her recite the question again? Mrs. Clerk, could you state the question for me, please?
That I lied for Lori Vallow.
I don't know how to answer that other than say it was a difficult moment for me, and that's just what I did.
Okay, so is being here today a difficult moment for you?
Of course it is.
Okay, and you're having some struggles because you're having some struggles because at some point you have information about JJ Vallow and about what happened to JJ Vallow, correct?
Best of my knowledge.
That's what?
Best of my knowledge, I'm sharing all that I know about.
So I want to go to the timeline of Chad Daybell a little bit.
Okay.
And you talked about arriving in Rexburg for the weekend of the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, that time frame. I guess Monday was the 23rd, Sunday was the 22nd, 21st on Saturday, 20th on Friday, 19th. And my recollection when I reviewed all of the reports and the other testimony that you've given, I was under the impression you arrived on Thursday.
I thought it was Wednesday, but it could have been Thursday. It's been too long to remember.
Okay, so the comment that you said that you saw Chad Daybell 2, 3, or 4 times previously in testimony, you're not sure about that either, correct?
Well, I can recall certain moments. I'd have to sit down and recall every time I saw him and
Okay.
think about that a little bit more.
Okay, so we aren't clear about how many times we saw Chad on that weekend, right?
Not 100% clear.
And let's kind of go over the timeline for that weekend if we could. If you can try to remember it if possible. You arrived not on Wednesday like you just previously testified to. You arrived on Thursday, right?
Is that right? I don't remember.
Okay.
You'd have to look at documents to show that. I'm fine with that. It doesn't matter to me if it was Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay. And again, you said you flew in?
That's right.
And what time did you fly in?
I feel like it was in the afternoon, but I can't recall the time.
And please don't let me mischaracterize your testimony, but my recollection is on that first day that you flew in on the Thursday, you didn't see Chad Daybell.
I believe it was either that evening or the next evening. I'm not recalling that.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm questioning you about this is the next evening, I almost said it, your boyfriend at the time came into town, correct?
Yeah, Friday.
And that was later in the afternoon, late in the evening, right?
That's right.
So when your boyfriend came into town, you hadn't seen Chad yet before your boyfriend
Well,
arrived, correct?
that's not true.
No, you did?
Yeah, I saw Chad
When did you see him?
previous to that.
What time?
Well, it was in the evening. I remember when we walked around the track at BYU, Idaho. It was in the evening. It was getting darker outside.
Okay. And that's the interaction that you described between Lori and Chad.
Part of it, yeah.
Now, one of the things when I listened to Lori's tape, what I was curious about, and I guess I didn't understand, was that on the tape recording with you and Chad and Lori, you talked to her about the issue of adultery, that she was having a relationship with a married man, and she was a married woman.
Correct.
Okay, and that is what was the phrase you used to describe what that is?
Inappropriate, maybe? I don't remember.
But it had a religious connotation to it, that it was in violation of something.
We were referencing one of the people in the Book of Mormon and talking about a certain king that had that type of behavior.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she said something about divorce.
Right.
And I'm going off of my recollection, but while you and David were going through your relationship in the beginning, he was still married, wasn't he? Or had he completed his divorce at that point?
Snap.
He was in the process of completing it.
So he was still technically married at that point, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Snap.
Sustained.
Okay. Okay.
Ain't going there. No drama. Save the drama for your mama.
So then David arrived on Friday.
Yes.
Did you see Chad at all on Friday?
I can't remember if I saw him Friday.
Okay. And then you were there for, I don't remember the name of the conference. Firm? Was that the name of the conference?
Trying to remember if that was Firm Foundation, maybe. Okay.
Was that, well, I
think that's the one.
I think we're both struggling to find out which one that was.
Yeah,
Which of those.
that I think that's what they referenced. It's my memory.
Okay. Firm Foundation. What is Firm Foundation?
It's a a few people that got together and talked about evidences of the Book of Mormon and some science. We're talking a lot about science
Okay,
as well that weekend.
okay. And that started early in the morning on that Saturday morning, right?
Sometime Saturday morning, I'm not recalling exactly the timing, but I would say sometime in the morning.
And then it ran till relatively late that night.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, I recall it was 10 plus hours of the seminar. It was an all day event, right?
I think so, yeah,
And that was basically all day Saturday, correct?
correct.
Okay. And then we go to Sunday, right?
Right.
And my recollection is, I'm going off of memory, is everybody went to church that morning?
I don't remember anybody going to church.
You don't remember Chad going to church?
No,
Do you remember a discussion with Chad and David about going to see a piece of property after Chad gets out of church on Sunday?
oh, yeah, I don't remember him saying, it could be, I just don't recall it, but it could be, but yes, they were going to go look at some property.
And after church, after they got done with their services and everybody was going to church, and I can't remember if you and David went to church that morning, but there was a reference to Chad and you guys were waiting for him to finish up church before you went to visit a piece of property, right?
Yeah, I feel like he might have been the only one if he did go. Yeah, I don't
So,
recall anybody else going. I just don't recall it.
okay. So Chad, obviously you didn't see him Sunday morning until you guys went out to see the property that Sunday afternoon.
I don't recall seeing him
Okay.
till then.
But you do recall going out to a piece of property, and I want to say south and east of Chad's property.
I wouldn't know the directions.
Me neither. But you went out there and do you recall who was out there when you went to look at that piece of property?
So it was Chad and I believe a man that was a realtor and me and David. I think Alex might have been there. And then there was a couple that drove by and, spoke to all of us for a few minutes and then they left.
And I don't recall, was Lori there as well?
No, she wasn't.
Okay. She was at home with who?
I'm assuming she was at home with her son.
JJ.
Mhm.
Okay. Because after you folks went out to look at this piece of property, you went directly back to Lori's townhome, correct?
I think so.
Yeah. And we don't know where Chad when he went home, I presume, right? You don't know.
I don't remember. Yeah.
Okay. So was this a piece of property that I almost said it again, your boyfriend, and please forgive me if I meant to say husband or boyfriend, it's going to be tough for me, but your boyfriend at the time was looking at a piece of property to purchase, correct?
They were introducing the idea of purchasing it, but he had no concept if he would do it or not, but it was something they proposed to him.
Okay. Okay. Well, I understood it a different way. I understood that your boyfriend was interested in potentially developing a piece of property and asked Chad to introduce him to a realtor. That's the way I understood it.
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike. Counsel's testifying.
Judge,
The question was asked and answered.
Sustained.
He's
Is it
getting
possible
testimony.
that it was your boyfriend who was looking at a piece of property and asked Chad to refer him to a real estate agent?
I don't believe so.
Okay. But in any event, you and Alex and your boyfriend David and this real estate person and Chad went out to look at this piece of property, correct?
Correct.
And then you went back home, and that was late afternoon, if I recall. Is that correct?
It feels like it was.
Yeah. And then at that point, the one of the projects that you and Lori, I think it was just you and Lori, were involved was starting to prepare to do what's called a podcast.
Are you talking about the evening, the one on Sunday evening?
That Sunday, we're on Sunday right now, I think.
Yeah. So yeah. We were going to sometime do it. We weren't sure exactly where we're going to get to it, but we finally got to it on Sunday night.
Right. And correct me, was it just you and Lori, or was David involved in that too?
All three of us.
The
Yes.
three of you. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And then you were going to do this podcast. And you did that. And my recollection is it started at at like 8 or 9 o'clock,
Yeah, that sounds about right.
and it went till after midnight.
Yeah, somewhere. I knew it was like around midnight. I don't know if it was after it. I just know it was kind of late.
Okay, so you didn't see Chad other than on Sunday. You saw Chad for the land. And you didn't see him that night during the podcast, right?
He might have come over after the land. I don't recall, but he was not at the podcast.
Okay. And you don't recall whether he was there after the land, though. You're saying he may have.
It's possible.
Okay. Okay. But then during the podcast, my understanding is that sometime during the podcast, you observed Alex Cox carrying JJ Vallow on Sunday night with his head on his shoulders upstairs.
That's right.
Okay. And you don't know which bedroom he put JJ in, is that right?
I did not witness where he put him, but he was not in JJ's room or he was not in Tylee's room.
Okay. But you and David were in Tylee's room that night.
No, we were in both. Well, no, it was JJ's room.
Oh, you were in JJ's room?
Yeah, it was JJ's room.
Okay. Now, in terms of the bedrooms, when you walk up the stairs, there's 3 bedrooms up there, correct?
Yes.
And they're all relatively close bedrooms. Would you agree with that?
Tylee and JJ's were close and Lori's was down the hallway.
Okay. But when we say down the hallway, that's a relative term, isn't it?
Well, they're not as close as the other two.
Right. But they're also not a long distance away. This was not a large townhome, was it?
No, it was just from one end of the townhome to the other.
Right. It's a short distance to one
I
bedroom.
guess relative to a lot of things, yes.
Okay. Okay. So when you went to bed at whatever time that was after the podcast, at that point, you were presuming that Lori also went to bed and decided to lay down with JJ, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you and David you went to sleep after some prayer.
Yes.
Okay. So you don't know where JJ was that night, correct?
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay. But you were in the house when Alex brought him up initially at what time was that when Alex brought him up again?
I don't recall. It was a little bit, maybe a few hours into us doing the podcast.
Okay. And then you said David had, I don't want to put words, he had a nightmare or a vision?
They kind of felt like both. I'm not really sure. It was just a bad experience he had.
Okay.
You'd have to ask him what he felt like it was.
You don't remember?
I remember he was very alarmed by it and upset by it.
Okay. And was he alarmed enough and upset enough that did both of you get up and knock on the door of Lori's door?
No.
Did either of you try to locate Lori and say, is everything okay? Because this was alarming.
I did.
Did you knock on the door of the
Yeah, I went over to her door and tried to open it and it was locked.
Okay, but you didn't knock, right?
I might have. I don't recall. I just know I tried to get in.
Okay, and it wasn't opened.
Right.
Did you go down to the other bedroom that was closer to where you and David were staying and checked on that bedroom?
No.
Okay. Okay. And then after this alarming event that was so traumatic to David, you slept in until what time?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I probably woke up around 7 or something in the morning. I don't know.
Okay. And from previous testimony, you indicated that you took off and left at about 9:30. Does that sound about right?
Sounds about right.
Okay. And at that point, again, even though David had this traumatic experience about this nightmare, you didn't ask to see JJ, did you?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Overruled.
You didn't
Also, what
Ask.
relevance?
to see JJ.
It's possible I did. I don't recall what I said to her when I came downstairs.
Okay. Well, you make a lot of comments, it's possible, but you don't remember asking to see JJ, do you?
I remember when you're meeting with somebody for a full weekend, you don't remember all the conversations you have. You do your best to remember all that you can recall.
Well, I appreciate that because, in the beginning of your testimony with the prosecuting attorney, you were very clear about all of these memories that you had about zombies, about dark and light.
Objection, Your Honor. This is a narrative. Move to strike. It's argumentative.
Sustained.
You were very clear on your testimony about zombies. You didn't have a memory loss about that, did you?
No,
You didn't have a memory loss about dark and light, right?
no.
You didn't have a memory loss about how often you saw Chad, right?
Sometimes I remember seeing him. It wasn't a memorable weekend to remember when he came in and out all the time.
But you were very clear about all of the things that Lori Vallow told you at the bequest of Chad. You were real clear about that, weren't you? No?
I said, yeah.
Okay. Judge, I don't know if you want to, I unfortunately have quite a ways to go now, and I apologize to the court, but I got a ways to go.
Oh, you don't need to apologize, Mr. Pryor. We'll take our time to get through this witness, but we are towards the end of where we're going to get with the witness today. As I mentioned, the court's got another hearing to take up this afternoon. So if there's no objection from either side, I would like to recess for the day and resume tomorrow. State okay with that?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blake.
Well, that's
Yes,
a
Judge.
cliffhanger.
Very well.
That's a cliff.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as you retire for the evening, go home, please follow the court's continuing instruction and admonishment to not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. And please don't do anything to research or look the case up, so you can remain unbiased in the case and make your decision just based on the evidence you hear here at trial. If you happen to run across any media about this case, please try to avert your attention from that. And with that in mind, I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning. Thank you. All rise, please.
This Stephen Avery is the hello, welcome Mia B. They're just ending, and we're going to be ending in a minute here. Cliffhanger. He's telling they have tomorrow is Friday. No court till, oh my gosh, that's right. They don't do court on Fridays here. Oh my God. Oh my God. We've got a long cliffhanger. I'm so the Stephen.
Yes, thank you. We'll
The
be
one
in
from-
recess until
Oh,
starts at 3:30. The witness can step down, and I will just remind you, Ms. Gibb.
wait.
Yes, thank you. We'll be in recess until this next hearing starts at 3:30. The witness can step down, and I will just remind you, Ms. Gibb, also you're not to be that have testified in the case.
Wait, I'm confused. I'm confused.
Witness the lies.
I didn't lie to you on that polygraph, I promise.
I'm a little confused because I thought they said they were going to end court today. But then let me go back.
Okay. You went back home, and that was late afternoon, if I recall. Is that correct?
The evening.
Alex Cox got on a date.
Not-
There's three.
Objection, Your Honor.
It wasn't a memorable weekend to remember when he came in and out all the time.
You don't need to apologize, Mr. Pryor. We'll take our time to get through this witness, but we are towards the end of where we're going to get with the witness today. As I mentioned, the court's got another hearing to take up this afternoon. So if there's no objection from either side, I would like to recess for the day and resume tomorrow.
So they are going to resume tomorrow. Or either that or the judge forgot that tomorrow is Friday. So the court has another hearing. So when he said they're going to resume at 3:30, he meant the court, not this trial. And this court does, I'm going to go, there's a Chad Daybell versus Idaho, or Idaho versus Chad Daybell docket. And it says, it gives information. Oh, darn it. I can't get into it right at this moment. Wait. Yeah. Okay. I'm on the cases of interest page. Because, well, I'm just going to have to figure it out and all. They are on mountain time right now, Harlot, because it's daylight time. And in Idaho, during daylight time, they are on mountain time. But during standard time, they are on Pacific time. It's really confusing. So they are 1 hour ahead of me. I am on Pacific time. So just look here. Here's the best way to stay up to date. Just watch for, because I will make sure that I know when they're going to be in court next, and I will schedule my live for that. And if they're going to be in court tomorrow, I will schedule a live, and I will be live streaming it tomorrow. If they aren't going to be in court tomorrow, I will schedule it for Monday. And, you know, we'll continue our group hugs, and our discussions are very enlightening and helpful and empowering discussions. But I found it interesting how Pryor just cannot control himself in his questioning. You know, he's one of these people who has some impulse control. Yes, I am streaming the entire trial, Truth Junkie. This case has been special to me from the very beginning. So has a special place in my heart. So I'm committed to streaming the entire thing. You know, barring any unforeseen circumstances. I'll just say that. So I just think, you know, Pryor, he has some impulse control issues. You know, he has a hard time sometimes keeping his mouth in line, and in terms of like not interrupting, not getting argumentative, not trying to get his agenda across. And Chad is entitled to a rigorous defense, but that rigorous defense starts working against the defendant when it rubs the jury the wrong way. You know, when it starts showing and displaying to the jury that these maneuvers are kind of desperate maneuvers. So, you know, before I close things out, I do want to share just some links. I haven't been sharing these links throughout, just, you know, so because I've been forgetting, in all honesty, but I'm sharing them now. Just never expected, always appreciated. And if you want to join and get special emojis and membership badge and all that type of stuff, please join. I'm also planning to put together a mental health stream on my other channel, Checkmate Humanity. I've been covering on my other channel, Checkmate Humanity. I've been covering true crime coverage, basically. I've been covering true crime coverage and other matters as well. And my specific focus is on how social media, the internet platforms, reward the worst behavior, reward and encourage the worst behavior. And when the average person comes and gets interested in a true crime case and they want to look at true crime every day, they get introduced to misinformation and drama that is just completely unnecessary and does a disservice to true crime victims. And I have a really hard time with that. So I talk about that on my other channel. So thank you. I appreciate the thank yous in the chat. And I thank you for entertaining me in the chat while I stream this trial. Because I'd be watching this trial anyway, with or without you. But I'm so, so, so happy that you're here to watch it with me. So again, thanks for being here. Hit thumbs up and have a lovely, lovely rest, Lana-free rest of your day. I just thought I'd add that in there. All right. Talk to y'all later. Bye.